Sup, it's your boy Crux, back at it again. You might know me from such bangers as the one other video on my channel. Yeah, that's me. Anyway, I've heard the fan base speak, and I'm willing to give him exactly what he's asked for. So I've got a much higher quality. Okay, maybe not higher quality. Higher effort video that's in the pipeline. All right, I'm like halfway through writing the script, but it's taking longer than I thought. So I thought I'll just crank out this low effort thing just to bridge the gap, so that I don't look like I've forgotten that I told someone I'd upload a video. All right, so today's topic, I'm just going to be reviewing a bunch of U.S. constitutional amendments that didn't pass. Just a bunch of ones that people attempted to get through but didn't get through. So it's a real mixed bag. So I'm gonna be rating them on the cringe scale here, all the way from utterly based, undeniably based, all the way up to like wow, you should be shot. That's the scale. I just made it up this second. Anyway, I'm gonna start off with this it's like a shot from a book. I'm going to start with those ones because that's what got me onto this topic, and then I'm going to move on to a bunch of other ones that I found out via a cursory glance on Wikipedia. So let's get started. Woo! Also, I'm only going to give you one clue as to what the high effort video is going to be about. See if you can guess it. If you can guess it, then I promise I'll buy a hat of your choosing. Whoever comments and guesses correctly, I'll buy a hat of your choosing and wear it for at least a minute in the high effort video when I release that. All right, that's a promise. All right, so this is the one and only clue you're getting. I make it with hops, with hops they find in the prairies, the distant prairies and the woods. Anyway, let's get right into it. 1876, abolish the Senate. I'm leaving it there. There's another one that's going to come up in a bit that's quite similar. If that's all it is, it's going there. All right, no debate, nothing. All right, that's all right. Next amendment. All right, the forbidding of religious leaders from occupying a governmental office or receiving federal funding. I mean, I can see where they're coming from. You don't want to accidentally institute a theocracy if you're a supposedly secular country, do you? I don't agree with it personally. I think religious leaders kind of have their own qualities. If someone who owns a business can get into power, and that's not considered an exploit of their greed, then surely someone who runs a religious institution can run, and it's not seen as an extension of theocracy. So, I see where they go. Right in the middle. I don't think they're trying anything silly with that one. Next one. An executive council of 3 to replace the office of president. Okay, so an amendment just outright creating a triumvirate. That's that's pretty high up on the old cringe scale. I'll move it down a little bit actually, because technically they had 2 kings in Sparta. They had a dual monarchy, and that seemed to work. I don't know whether that's so each one can like mind their own branch of the government, you know, like executive and judicial and all that, or whether that's just cringe for the sake of cringe. Also, surely if you're going to split the presidency up, you can't make it an odd number, can you? Or at least not a small odd number, because then it just goes from one guy says what happens to 2 guys constantly override one guy and they say who happens. Surely you've either got to make it an even number to ensure that it is possible to have a deadlock and thus the power of the few has been successfully stopped from being enacted, even if it means there's a bit of fighting going on. Or you've got to make it a large number, odd or even, because at least that makes it harder for a couple to hold a lot of power. Because sure, that's the point, right? You want to limit the power of an individual, so you make the role that was formerly filled by an individual 3. I just think that's silly. I'm glad no one really gave that much mind. Okay, on to the next one. Renaming the nation to the United States of the Earth. I'm autistic and I would never propose that. Abolishing the United States Army and Navy. Ooh. My inner my inner ANCAP sympathies are popping off at that one. Oh god, it's like horseshoe theory. Is that so like cringe that you want to destroy your own national protection that it goes all the way down, all the way up there? Or is that so base that you want to disarm the state that it goes right down into the pit of basedness? That's tricky. That's a tricky one. Fuck. It's at both extremes. That's that one. It's at both extremes. It's horseshoe theory in action. All right. That's how I'm ranking that one. This one, acknowledging that the Constitution recognized God and Jesus Christ as the supreme authorities in human affairs. So this is essentially a state recognition that the Christian God is the one being talked about in all the previous documents, that you have rights endowed by your Creator and things like that. Okay. Do I need to explain? Look at my channel name. Do I need to explain why? Right down there. That's where that one belongs. Right in the pit of basedness. All right. Don't get me wrong. If you're a secular state, I can see why that would sort of fuck with your self-image. Secular government, I could see why you wouldn't want to do that. But come on, man. I don't care how many of them were deists. Just put it down there. That's a good. It's a solid attempt. It's worth discussing. Next one. Making marriage between races illegal. Alright, this is the anti-miscegenation. This is an attempt at an anti-miscegenation amendment. I'll be honest. I have edgier opinions than most on this topic. But that being said, you know, it would not feel even in the slightest bit moral to enact this kind of crime against love, alright? Because that's what it is. It occupies both extremes again, I suppose. It's on both sides. It's both like,
oh yeah, we fixed the race question. Based, bro.
But it's also like, really? You're just gonna stop people from getting together and having kids? I don't like that one. 1914, finding divorce to be illegal. Don't get me wrong, sometimes people need to get divorced, but fucking... I don't know whether this amendment is saying, like, just full stop, no divorce ever, or whether it's taking the Jesus approach to divorce, which is just, hey, if there's no infidelity or, like, abuse, then it's fine, leave it. But either way, that's... even if I would think it's a little extreme, you can't deny that's a pretty base. Oh, all acts of war should be put to a national vote. Anyone voting yes had to register as a volunteer for service in the United States Army. Service guarantee citizenship. Yes. Unironically, yes. Full support, yes. That should be the case for all countries that claim to be even remotely democratic, yes. Democracy isn't the best thing in the world, but if you're going to pretend it is, you need that law, 100%. You need that amendment, you need that baked into public life. The public get to decide if there's a war, and if you say yes to it, you have to be willing to fight in it. Yeah, that's... yes. Right, 1933. Ooh. Interesting year. An attempt to limit personal wealth to $1 million. That's just kind of good. That's fucking... That's cringe. Now, I mean, there's one that's a little bit different from this that I have a much different opinion on that I'll come around to after I'm done with these ones. But that just... fuck off. You're just punishing success. Fuck you. Right, 1936. An attempt to allow the American people to vote on whether or not the United States should go to war. Kinda based, I suppose. But that's just a watered-down version of the other one. I wouldn't entertain that if the other one was on the table. Nah, never. 1938. The forbidding of drunkenness in the United States and all its territories. They try to ban alcohol, they succeed, it gets repealed. They try to re-ban alcohol, it gets repealed, and they say, look, even Jesus said don't be drunk. Fair, I mean, that's technically... same time, it's kind of cringe. It's kind of, it's milquetoast. I'll say that. It's milquetoast. There you go. It doesn't occupy both extremes. It's milquetoast. I am unbiased on this question. Ricky. The income tax maximum for an individual should not exceed 25%. That's Just yes. There should obviously be a national limitation on income tax. You can come after people for like being punitive in the private sphere for how much they charge for stuff or how much they bill people for stuff. You can go after people for that, right? If you systematically overcharge for stuff, but then like don't let people know you are going to charge them, all right, that's considered fraud, right? But the government can do exactly that by just choosing when it wants to jack up the income tax or any other tax for that matter, right? And you just do that. Now, granted, that seems to be worded in such a way that other taxes. Yeah, I don't see any. Okay, so technically, that amendment wouldn't stop them from just making other taxes to continually overtax people. But come on, there has to be some limitation that you can at least reference, alright? That's absolutely, yeah, we need that. Everyone needs that. The US needs that. Everyone needs that. Absolutely. Alright, second to last of the image. What the fuck is a WebP? I just realised that's the file. I've never seen that in my life. Jesus. The right of citizens to segregate themselves from others. I wonder what social issue was prompting that discussion. I mean, if you truly believe in free association, you can't help but just acknowledge that that is a fact, alright? Even if it's an uncomfortable thing to admit, you have to acknowledge that if people in your country are truly free to live to their own rules, right? Even if they do follow the law, you have to let them say, I don't want to be around other people and I want to willfully guard my space from them, alright? Come on. Regardless of what your opinion on the topic is, you can't deny that that has to be an option for people, alright? You can't stop people from doing that and still call yourself a free country, alright? I'll just put it this way. Don't look into how many soldiers they sent into schools to intimidate the kids in the 1960s. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. Alright, the last one of the fucking WebP, apparently. I didn't know that fucking thing even existed. Alright, American citizens should have the inalienable right to an environment free of pollution. Cringe. Alright, now we're going into the ones that this list didn't mention, that I found on Wikipedia. Some of these will clarify things that I said in the first half. Alright, let's get started. Alright. The dueling ban amendment proposed in 1838. Cringe! Don't ban dueling. After Representative William Graves killed another representative. Jonathan Silly! His name was Silly. Is it Killy? I hope it's Silly. In a duel, would have prohibited any person involved in a duel from holding federal office. Nah, that's cringe. That's cringe. No, come on. We should bring back dueling. Come on, how the fuck are you supposed to fix your own problems? Could you imagine how much police money you would save if you could just have a fight? Lethal or non-lethal, even if it's just the threat of a fight that causes you to bring your buddies in, have a discussion, and figure something out. That would save court fees, that would save policing fees, it would make people feel like they had more agency over their own lives. Just bring back dueling. Constitutional amendments requiring an equal number of slave states and free states, and creating 2 co-presidents from the North and South, which would have to concur on all legislation. Yeah, real sneaky, come on. Don't get me wrong, that period of history is a highly propagandized period of history. But come on, that's just sneaky, come on. You really think we're not going to notice up there on the cringe mountain? You really think we're not going to notice that you just essentially created the Confederate States of America without technically creating the Confederate States of America? I mean, I appreciate that they did that before trying to secede. It's proof that they're trying to, like, work with you, but, like, come on, man. You seriously thought anyone would agree to that? Come on, that's just silly. I mean, nice try. I appreciate the grind, but the Blaine Amendment, proposed in 1875, would have banned public funds from going to religious purposes in order to prevent Catholics from taking advantage of such funds. I mean, I can see where they're coming from, sort of secular state, middle of the road. I think, religious institutions should generally be based on donations, not on taxes, so fair enough. Yeah, I'll keep it in the middle. It's sensible. It's not based or cringe like everything I've been discussing. It's just sensible. Like, come on. In that era, where the church wasn't exactly unhealthy, that's completely unnecessary. Don't do that. Now we're in a state where a lot of churches are suffering, right? A lot of churches are suffering. Maybe this sort of attitude might hinder them a little bit. Because let's be real, if we're willing to say that you can tax poor people practically to death over,
Oh, you bought something that there's a tariff for.
or
Oh, we just need to take this from your income.
oh, you need to pay fucking council tax, because Tony Blair thinks that you
Have too much money.
overall that stuff. If you can seriously say that it's somehow fine to give poor people that burden, then would it really hurt to repeal a couple of those and just replace it with, okay, here's the tithe that you give to the local church? Okay, nowadays, I would be less opposed to it. An amendment allowing property-owning unmarried women to vote was the underlying logic behind this was that single women did not have husbands to represent their interests via the vote. I mean, if you have a limit, in the US context, I would say this is milquetoast, alright? But in the broader scale of things, if you have a genuine limit for who can and can't vote based on what successfully predicts someone working for the country, right? Like in a big farming country, it would be how much land you own would determine whether you had the vote, or maybe income. In a mercantile republic, it would be just income, or maybe total property owned. Or like assets in general, stocks and shares, that sort of thing. In a relatively well-rounded state that supposedly has the people's will at mind always, it would be something like service guarantees citizenship, right? It would be the Starship Troopers. No, you have to genuinely prove that you deserve the vote. You have to prove that you're willing to put the hours in and that you give enough of a shit to risk it all for the vote, right? So I suppose the fact that this is limited, it's property-owning unmarried women, sure, yeah, whatever. I don't think everyone should get the vote. I just think whichever way you do give the vote out needs to be very carefully combed. Here we are. I mentioned this one earlier. It's a different amendment abolishing the Senate. Now, I mentioned this one. I mentioned that the first one was kind of based, but I mentioned that this one was kind of cringe. This amendment would have also shielded the unicameral House of Representatives legislation from presidential veto and judicial review. So this is literally just, there's no Senate anymore, but the one elected house that there still is, the president can't mess with. No. See, this is why I don't like democracy. I like the principle of democracy. The process of democracy is never in line with the principle. It's always just petty bullshit. Cringe. Like, come on, do I really have to be the average PragerU viewer and point out that the US isn't made to be a democracy? Making me pull a PragerU card. An anti-polygamy amendment. I know what I said about crimes against love, but if you're one person and your yearning on the inside for your love is that, it has to be multiple people, you're sick, alright? You're sick. Or at the very least, you don't have your emotions in control. Sort yourself out, alright? Devote yourself to one person, they can devote themselves to you, boom. You've left open every other man or woman in the world for everyone else to get with and marry, alright? Polygamy is something that must only be resorted to in the most desperate times possible. Like tribal warfare, a third of our male population has died in a single war type situation. On every other context, it just creates a cast of men who have 2 wives and a cast of men who have no wives who die in wars. That's all it creates, right? It does no good for anybody. To put into perspective how primitive polygamy is as a concept, I think it's true that you have twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors, because technically there are so many men were dying throughout prehistory from various causes that each one, like the average was to have about 2 wives, right? You know, some people, the ones who had 0 obviously died and didn't appear on the genetic record, and the ones that had 1 were they were there, but it's mainly people of 2 or more, and that's because of all the other men dying, and that accidentally means that if you trace back all of your male and female ancestors, you have twice as many female ones. It's crazy. Yeah, right. We do not need polygamy. I'm so glad we live in a culture that generally accepts monogamy. That's based. Here's the one that's similar to the income limit one that I actually like. All right, an amendment to limit investment income. I don't know, man, that sounds pretty good. I'm all for people investing, right, and getting a return on their investment. But if you are just speculating, that's your entire source of income, You are just moving money around without yourself being productive. Now, I do not hold, like, the Marxist labour theory of value. I don't believe, it's a zero-sum game. I don't believe any of the Marxist ideas about economics, right? But that being said, just from a moral perspective, has there been anyone out there who's made their fortune by just moving money around who hasn't turned out to be a total twat? You name anyone like that? You might say, oh, Elon Musk. No, Elon Musk runs a company, right? He runs stuff, he makes stuff, he directs people, alright? He's not just an investor, right? And as much as it pains me to say it, technically even Bill Gates falls into that category, alright? At least he made something at some point in his life, alright? But yeah, I think a limit on investment income, pretty based, a limit on investment income would at least make sure that if you wanted to be mega rich, you would have to continually do a good job or whatever it is you were doing to get money. I think it's fair. I don't think you should be limited as to how much you can earn in total, but from investments, sure. There should be a limit on your investment income. Whether that be to encourage you to spend that money on other investments so that you're forever throwing your money out of the car as quickly as you're bringing it in, right? Or whether that be to encourage people to spend it on things that aren't investments, but are just, donations to public good, right? Or whether it even be just to prevent these people from basing their entire portfolio off of investments, and instead getting people to more focus on just doing a good job at whatever they do. Whatever the case, based. Yeah. See, this one, alright, the Bricker Amendment proposed in 1951 would have limited the federal government's treaty-making power by prohibiting treaties from violating the US Constitution and limiting executive agreements. Opposed by President Dwight Eisenhower. I wonder how that would have impacted World War II if that was just a little bit earlier and it was passed. I think the US kind of needed that. Generally speaking, the US, the people of the US have a good history behind them. But their government is always sneaky. You can't deny that the US in particular has a bad history when it comes to writing treaties. Alright, don't go, my country, Great Britain, I believe our empire was a net good on the world. Alright, we did bad things, we did good things, I think the good things outweigh the bad things. That being said, I can't deny that we were sneaky bastards when it came to writing treaties. We wrote a lot of bad treaties, alright? And the US just followed in that Anglophone tradition. I think that's based. I think the US needs that. I think everyone needs that, to be fair. Like, why should you be enforcing rules upon other countries that you wouldn't force upon your own people? That just makes it harder for you to just be randomly unfair in wars, alright? If your country stands for a principle, if you have a constitution specifically to outline the principles of your country, you should obviously be beaming out those principles in all directions, not just in your own country. Repeal of the 22nd Amendment would eliminate term limits for presidents. I don't know. I mean, if a president's doing such a good job that he keeps getting elected, I can see why people would like that, but then there's the whole, what if he just keeps cheating over and over again? So, it's on both extremes, it's both cringe and based. Flag Desecration Amendment to give Congress power to make burning flags illegal and similar acts. If you're in a country that, actually ascribes moral and cosmic significance to your government, like mine, like the British government, according to the British government, our head of state is the king, and he is the head of state specifically because God, who is Protestant, because God specifically picked him and his lineage to rule over us. The government of the United Kingdom is actually like a cosmic entity, alright? So for that reason, I could see why in a country like that, you would go, yeah, you can't burn the flag. No, we're here for a reason, the king's here for a reason, you can't just randomly badmouth him, you have free speech, but you can't just randomly badmouth him and besmirch his name, alright? And you can't burn flags. You can't deface an image of him or something like that. I could see why you'd have that. But in a secular, supposedly, purely, enlightenment-oriented state like the US, that's just silly. That's cringe. The Balanced Budget Amendment. I don't need to explain that one. No more infinite debt. Can you tell I'm speedrunning this because I realise how long the video is? Proposed amendments for congressional term limits. So just term limits, but for Congress. Sure, if the president has them, surely everyone else should have them too. Yep, fair, based, whatever. Equal opportunity to govern amendment. Oh no. Yeah, repeal the Constitution's natural-born citizen clause, thus allowing naturalized citizens who have been US citizens for at least 20 years to become president or vice president. Nah, I don't care how much of a
nation of immigrants
you are. You can't just have people come over and then rule your country. That's silly. Even the interesting figures that have very recently been prime minister of my country, even they have at least been born here. I think that's cringe. No, I don't care how nice Arnold Schwarzenegger is. No. If you come to a country, you should never get to be the leader of that country. All right. The leadership, if it's going to come from anywhere, must come from a natural-born population. Proposed constitutional amendments barring the government from imposing taxes on refusal to purchase goods or services. This was all about the fact that due to the Affordable Health Care Act and all that bollocks, people were essentially saying, wait, so the government is just going to penalise me because I didn't buy health insurance. I don't want to buy it, I'm willing to take the risk, and the government's like,
no, you're not allowed to do that.
That's silly. That's freaking based. Obviously based. The government can't tax you for not buying something. Alright, that is cronyism at its worst. Alright, that should be a hangable offence. Abolishing birthright citizenship for children born of foreign nationals as a deterrent against illegal immigration. I'd say that's I wouldn't say it's based or quick, I would just say that's sort of sensible. It's in the middle. I could see why you'd argue for it, I could see why you'd argue against it. An amendment repealing the 16th Amendment and abolishing the federal income tax. Based! The hopes around that one, I think, that they'd replace the taxes imposed upon the people on income with taxes imposed upon the people regarding consumption, which I think that's fair. I don't think it's fair that, you're successful, therefore the government's going to rob you. I don't think it's fair. But the idea that, you are spending a lot of your own money, therefore, depending on how much money you spend, the government can take a cut of that. You could say, but for the shopkeeper, he would get less of that money, so is it essentially the same? No, it isn't. It's not essentially the same thing. If you are working for that money, just in a job where you're just being handed the cash, alright, that's your cash. Granted, it would probably have some similar effects on the market, but I'm not bothered about the effects on the market in regards to this one. For this one, I'm just thinking in my head, I don't think it should just be an automatic thing that you just get robbed instantly. I think you should have some level of control over that. A tax on consumption for each individual person being taxed, I think, would provide them with more. It would provide them more control over their own lives, which I respect. An amendment prohibiting barriers to voting for adult Americans, including undue burden of proof or identity. No, cringe. We don't need to talk about that. God, I'm going to look terrible at this. I'm going to have to bring up Elon Musk a second time. He recently talked about this very issue, alright? No, that's ridiculous. To be fair, though, there's another part of that that's about electoral districts, which, yeah, I think electoral districts are abused as fuck, so I can see why you'd want to amend that, sure. The wording here is composed of geographically compact and contiguous territory, and designated election day as a national holiday unable to be altered by the government. That's fair. Some of that is good, but I think they're just doing that to make the first half not look quite so bad. You need to be able to prove that you're a citizen if you want to vote. Costco does that. Literally Costco. You can't go into Costco without proof that you're a member of Costco. Right, it's just, surely, if you think that's sensible because, the membership gets you the cheap prices, therefore you can't cheat your way into the membership, then that's also the case for, citizenship, right? Citizenship is the ultimate membership, alright? Obviously, that's just silly. An amendment to repeal the penal exemption clause from the 13th Amendment prohibiting unfree labour from being used as a punishment. Prison is a very expensive business, and the work never ever outpaces the cost, so the least you're doing is just offsetting the cost a little bit, and I think that's necessary, alright? Because remember, that money isn't just appearing from thin air, it's getting paid by all the people that are following the law. The less you make criminals work, the more you make law-abiding people pay, which I think is just foul. That's cruelty to the innocent. We're on the last one, boys. Can you tell I'm worn out from all this leaning back and forth? President Joe Biden proposed that no one is above the law amendment. Alright guys, thank you for watching this ridiculously good video that wasn't stammery and had perfect chroma keying and which was totally worth watching.